Ever sense an unseen hand steering you, each choice, urge, and impulse arising from a mental backroom you don't govern? A dim, ancient presence that neither seeks consent nor offers reasons, and persists even when it escapes your sight. Do you ever feel that quiet pull steering you beneath awareness? Comment 1 if you've noticed that unseen hand in your choices. Comment 2 if you believe you're fully in control. Carl Jung named this the unconscious. More disquieting, though, is what it conceals. A quiet, primal current pulsing through your life story like a vein concealed beneath the skin. You leave it unnamed and avoid facing it, yet it still pilots your thoughts, reactions, and fixations. Sex. Not the act, not the pleasure, not even simple wanting. Here, sex means symbol and psychic drive, the quiet motor behind so much of your behavior, however loudly you deny it. Think on this. Why choose those clothes? Why measure your words with certain people? Why grind so hard for admiration, validation, and acceptance? And why does an inexplicable hollowness creep in when you're alone? Because an older need sits beneath it. To be wanted, to belong, to be seen. Leave that need unexamined and unmet, and it eats away from within, often without your noticing. Here is where Jung matters. He approached sex unlike society, as an archetype, a potent psychic energy that, if unacknowledged, condenses into your shadow. That shadow then scripts choices and fears, shapes relationships and dreams, letting you feel free while quietly cueing every move. In Jung's frame, sex isn't taboo. It's a key, a doorway to your real self. Stepping through, however, demands what most won't risk. You must face the impulses that unsettle you most, the desires you won't confess, and the masks you wear. The truth: most people aren't who they imagine. They are what their drives have fashioned. The harder this is denied, the tighter the chains. Imagine your aims, routines, and bonds stained by sexual craving, misread, mishandled, pressed down until it putrefies in the unconscious. What if repression doesn't fortify you, but leaves you brittle and easy to sway? What if morality, prudence, or reason is merely a polished cage for something still howling to be released? Don't mix this up with pornography or scandal. We're pointing to something far more hazardous. Entire cultures have erected value systems atop the denial of a biological and psychological fact that hammers away beneath the surface. The sexual drive doesn't vanish when ignored. It morphs into anxiety, anger, frustration, into compulsions for control and approval, into hollow triumphs, fractured ties, chronic solitude, and enduring discontent. If you can't see it, it may be that you won't, because seeing requires admitting you're not in charge, that a carefully buried part of you has slipped from memory. What if this drive has carved your preferences, passions, and fears more than you realize? What if even your strongest convictions are rationalizations built to dodge that inconvenient truth? When Jung spoke of anima and animus, it wasn't sterile theory. He had watched meticulous, upright, brilliant people repeatedly crash into existential crises sharing one root, a severed link to their deep sexual dimension. Notice how your biggest choices thrum with unnameable tension. How a single look can strike harder than a speech that lasts an hour. And how desire, yes, desire, not love, can push you to betray your values, your plans, even yourself. That is the force in question. No tidy slogan or suppression will tame it. Your options are to understand and integrate it, or be consumed. This isn't a piece about sex. It's about genuine control, about the invisible cord tugging at civilization while it pretends to have outgrown it. You, reading this, face two paths. Keep assuming you're free, or begin to truly look. Caution: you may dislike what appears, but it will be real, brutally real. Now enter Jung's terrain. Grasping his discoveries can free you and overhaul how you perceive everything. Absolutely everything. Ready? It may sting, but it will wake you up. First principle: the mind is not one seamless unit. You are not singular. Inside, many forces, cravings, wounds, ideals, and masks coexist. Jung termed that totality the self, rarely integrated. And within that interior tumult, one of the strongest energies is what he called libido. Not Freud's strictly genital impulse. Jung extended the idea. Libido as universal psychic energy, both creative and destructive. The base on which personality forms. It includes sexuality, yes, but its core is transformation, not mere sex. Here many go astray, mistaking denial for control, repression for mastery, concealment for maturity. What actually happens is fracture. Identity splits, feeling detaches from display, and that split leaves them puppeteered by themselves. The repressed doesn't die. It hides, and from the shadow moves like a chained animal, quiet, yet steadily gathering force. Ever wonder why your relationships replay the same errors, the same types, clashes, and letdowns? That isn't chance. It's repetition from the unconscious. That's libido operating in shadow, trying to mend what you refuse to face, hunting balance through disorder. Jung warned repeatedly, what you don't make conscious becomes your destiny. Your sexual impulses are part of that warning. What you fail to grasp about yourself ends up steering you. What you disown takes possession of you. Now focus. This part matters. Pushed-down sexual desire does not stay confined to the bedroom. It seeps into your spirituality, your creative output, and even your felt purpose. Why so? Unconsciously handled energy warps. It becomes a fixation on control, a compulsion to chase goals you barely grasp, a frantic hunger for recognition, a constant craving for validation. Look around. Everyone is after something. Success, status, romance, wealth, power. Yet beneath many pursuits yawns the same void, a stark rupture from their authentic sexual core. This isn't moralizing or religious censure. It's a clinical observation. Jung witnessed it in hundreds of patients, educated, refined, self-aware, yet inwardly fractured, adrift, and helpless before a force they couldn't name. Many sought spiritual, philosophical, or existential solutions. With unsettling clarity, Jung redirected them to the last place they wished to examine, the long-denied desire at their core. Refused desire twists out of shape. It infiltrates thinking, slips into choices, and gradually converts you into a persona, a role, a mask. Another hard truth few admit: most people aren't themselves. They present a curated, compliant edit, crafted to avoid rejection, satisfy expectations, and preserve order. Beneath that facade, the unconscious smolders. One of its fiercest blazes is Eros, attraction, magnetism, energy-seeking connection, creation, expansion. Repress it for years, and it starts to undermine you, at work, in relationships, and in your mental health. You cannot mute such a deep layer without consequences. Jung was clear. Unexpressed energy congeals into neurosis. We see it everywhere now. Bright, gifted, well-resourced people stuck, snared in loops of anxiety, emotional dependency, and existential emptiness. Few dare to name the root, a severe disconnection from sexual energy, not as something base, but as something essential. Another discomforting truth: sexual energy is not only about pleasure. It is a tool for self-knowledge and inner transformation, the raw material for rebuilding yourself, if you learn to work with it. The trouble is, few are taught this. Instead, we're taught to fear, conceal, and hush it. Consequently, generations live psychologically maimed, half their psyche asleep, while desire doesn't vanish, but dons disguises. It masquerades as ambition, as romantic idealism, as ersatz spirituality, yet keeps crying to be integrated. Now a question that deserves gravity. How many major decisions sprang from your wish to be desired? How often did you shapeshift into what would draw attention, despite moving farther from who you are? Have you adapted yourself to be desired, or held the line on authenticity, even when it cost you? Comment 1. If you've often shapeshifted for approval. Comment 2. If you usually stay true to yourself. How many times did you trade authenticity for a fleeting dose of validation? If you answer honestly, a troubling insight emerges. In many respects, your life hasn't been fully yours. It has belonged to unacknowledged desire, to what Jung termed the collective unconscious, here functioning as a cultural sexual template, a lattice of images, roles, and expectations we absorb without noticing. That template is stronger than you imagine. It scripts how to desire, whom to desire, when, and to what degree. It dictates what counts as attractive, normal, or excessive. And if you don't fit, you feel defective. The gravest danger is this: the harder you force a fit, the farther you drift from inner truth. That's when symptoms appear. Jung also taught that symptoms are the soul's attempts to heal. Anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, existential ache. These are not the problem. They are the cry. A cry from something within that has been locked up for years. If that cry issues from unintegrated sexual energy, not a one-night urge, not surface wanting, but deep Eros, the current that links you to creativity, passion, and personal power. The same Eros Jung aligned with individuation, inner alchemy, the trek toward the real self, rather than the social persona. Then the first stage of that journey is this: recognizing you are not free. Your chains aren't primarily the system, society, or even biography. They're in the unconscious, in the shadowed corner where sexuality has been exiled, warped, and hidden. Until you venture there, you will keep searching outside for what has always been within. You'll go on believing you require love, achievement, and applause, when, in truth, what's required is reconnection to the source, that raw, fierce, potent current that lived in you long before it had a name. Sex, yes, but not as sold by ads, films, or algorithms. Rather, as Jung conceived it, the most candid doorway into your real self. The remaining question is blunt, yet shattering. Will you continue acting as though that door isn't there? Because if you choose to open it, brace yourself, nothing in your life will remain unchanged. And now, the plot tightens further. Most people don't just ignore that deep energy. They project it outward. Jung taught that whatever remains unconscious is projected outside, which means much of what you attack, crave, or reject in others is actually lodged within you. It is your shadow shouting back at you through another person's face. Few forces trigger projection, like repressed sexual longing. It sits at the root of chaotic relationships, emotional dependency, and unhealthy idealization. You aren't loving the other. You're loving your projection, loving the disowned part of you that you haven't integrated. Look closely. When someone dazzles you, when attraction feels near mystical, you're not seeing them clearly. You're staring at a mirror reflecting the Eros you carry, but fear to touch. That's the snare. You're not in love with them. You're in love with what they awaken in you. And when what they stir is so powerful it unbalances you, you pursue it like an addict, driven not by love, but by need. Unwittingly, that person becomes your unconscious gateway to your own inner power. But since you don't perceive it that way, you name it destiny, your other half, a soulmate, and you're swept into a story that rationalizes attachment, obsession, and hollowness, unaware that what you seek is inside. Jung saw this repeatedly: men projecting anima onto women, and women projecting animus onto men. These are not mere metaphors. They're inner realities, unfinished components of the psyche. Whenever someone arrives and upends your assumptions, it's because they're striking one of those incomplete parts. Faced with intense attraction, most either rush toward it, obsessing and clinging, or flee in fear, because Eros is not comfortable. True Eros disarms. It undresses you psychologically. It compels unfiltered self-seeing, and not everyone can bear that. Let's go deeper. Why does this energy wield such power? Able to shake your nervous system, cloud judgment, even reshape identity. Because it's not merely biological. It is mythic, symbolic, archetypal. Across cultures for millennia, sex has been cast as both sacred and perilous. It's no accident that sexual union can dissolve the ego, control slips, and the primitive, the divine, the animal emerge. Hence religion's impulse to regulate it. Whoever governs sex governs the person. If you don't consciously steward your relationship with that energy, someone else will. Here's the most unsettling twist. Sex can rule your life even without the act. You might be celibate, by vocation or circumstance, and still be dominated by that energy if you fail to integrate it. Eros doesn't require the physical. It manifests through fantasy and insecurity, blocked creativity, your manner of loving and of hating. It colors how you compete, seek prominence, and relate to power, money, and art. Repressed Eros finds any fissure to leak through. If blocked directly, it puts on masks, envy, pride, a compulsive urge to outshine, even self-sabotage. Indeed, self-sabotage can be unconscious punishment for refusing to live from your authentic desire. Jung warned that what isn't transformed repeats. Repressed desire doesn't die. It hardens into compulsion. Patterns then stretch across generations. Consider how many family conflicts and private tragedies stem from sexuality that's repressed, warped, or unspoken. Couples tearing each other apart. Children inheriting unspoken guilt. Secrets hid behind polite smiles. Marriages that function as living tombs. All because no one names it. No one wants to face the true source. The unconscious doesn't bargain or reason. It expresses. Without a conscious outlet, it seeps through any gap, sometimes as neurosis, sometimes as unsettling dreams, sudden passions, or a shadow so deep you can't see it, yet it shapes everything. That's why Jung pressed so hard on integration. Control isn't enough. You must listen and grasp what desire is communicating. Because within that energy lies an evolutionary key. When unperverted, Eros is an extraordinary creative force. Have you ever turned raw desire into art, work, or meaningful change? Comment 1 if you've successfully channeled it into creation. Comment 2 if it more often leaves you stuck or scattered. Here's the surprise. Major ideas, great works, and deep personal change often spring from transmuted desire. Jung linked this to alchemy. Lead turning to gold. Instinct refined into purpose. Passion becoming consciousness. But it happens only if you dare to look inward and face your shadow without running. It requires ceasing to blame the world for what you have not integrated in yourself. At bottom, what do you fear most about desire, rejection, judgment, or the possibility that truly allowing desire would collapse your current life? Perhaps you'll see that many decisions were padded with mediocrity to avoid confronting your inner fire. Maybe the real terror isn't losing control, but discovering you never had it. That what you labeled willpower was a chain of impulses you never understood. And when you truly start to see, freedom begins. Not freedom as mere license, but the deeper freedom to choose with awareness, to face your arrows and say, I know you're there. I don't need to disguise you. I can walk with you. That shift alters everything. Your work, your loving, your creativity, even your gaze in the mirror, because the inner war ends. But take care. Freedom has a cost. Integrating Eros removes the option of blaming others. You can no longer say, this happened to me, or they did this to me. You must concede that many times you built the cage, and your own repression made you a slave. That is hard to accept in a culture that idolizes victimhood and celebrates pain, not as a phase, but as an identity. Breaking from it demands strength, a symbolic death, abandoning the version of you designed to please, be accepted, and fit. It hurts, because some things can't be healed without first being dismantled, and your bond with desire is one of them. Imagine you had known this earlier, that from childhood, you learned sexual energy isn't a problem, but a compass. That instead of hiding Eros, you learn to hear it, channel it, and render it into art, action, and meaning. Who would you be today? What life would you be living? You can't revise the past, but from now on you can choose. Go on ignoring this part, or finally let it transform you. Remarkably, once you integrate Eros, it stops running you. You no longer obsess over validation, play power games, or loop through relational anxiety, because conscious Eros becomes light. A bright light, sometimes uncomfortable, yet healing, creative, and expansive. A light that reveals not only who you are, but who you might become. So when unaccountable attraction surges, when desire or an image, person, or sensation freezes you, don't flee, moralize, or mask it. Ask, which part of me is speaking? What wants to be seen? What is trying to be freed? Perhaps desire isn't the problem at all. Perhaps it's the doorway. Will you open it? And just when you think you've grasped it, a final, subtler snare appears, the one that has caught millions unnoticed. After making Eros conscious and beginning integration, the spiritual ego can surface, the enlightened persona. An inner voice whispers, "You've transcended desire. It no longer controls you." Beware. This too is illusion, another mask. Eros isn't something to transcend but to inhabit, not to overcome, but to honor. If you believe you're above it, you haven't understood it. Here things grow delicate. The real task isn't merely awakening to desire, but walking with it, neither making it identity, nor clinging to or worshiping it, nor using it as a fresh disguise. It is recognizing that Eros is neither enemy nor deity. It is a part of you, a shard of inner fire that can either illuminate or scorch. The difference hinges on whether you acknowledge it or deny it. Look around. People sprint towards something: money, fame, the perfect body, the ideal partner. But what if these pursuits are unconscious rituals to reconnect with lost Eros? What if the true path isn't accumulation at all, but an inward turn, to find which part of you went silent when you began behaving well? Society prefers you domesticated, predictable, and severed from desire, because a person reconciled with Eros resists manipulation. Such people don't buy hollow narratives or seek tribal belonging to feel whole. They are free, and that frightens others. A free person is dangerous, not for harm, but for contagion. Their mere presence exposes how asleep others remain. And here we are, you and I, either at an ending or a beginning, depending on your view. What you've heard aren't answers, but triggers and fissures, questions that may pursue you for days. That is good. It signals inner movement, that what was repressed is gaining name, shape, and voice. You may start noticing, recalling times you refused desire out of fear. Patterns may become visible. You may no longer see certain people, or yourself, the same way. That, believe me, is promising, because only what is faced with ruthless honesty can transform. Before we close, do one thing. If you've come this far, it isn't by accident. Comment this line: "My shadow no longer scares me." Don't do it for me. Do it for yourself. Writing and asserting it, naming it aloud, is an act of power, the first step from denial toward truth. If this has stirred something deep, if it loosened even one stone in the wall around your desire, subscribe. This channel isn't for entertainment. It exists to challenge, to shake, to reveal what others would rather you not see. We're not here to polish the surface. We're here to shatter it. So follow if you dare to face what others conceal, if you're done with empty explanations, if you want to understand how your mind truly works, and above all, if you're ready to stop lying to yourself. I'll go now, but first, Listen. Turn off the screen, close your eyes, and quietly ask, which part of me have I been denying all this time? Take a deep breath and heed what silence says. Sometimes what you cannot hear is what screams the loudest. See you in the next video, or perhaps in your shadow. After all this, which path are you choosing? Avoidance or integration? Comment 1 if you're ready to face and work with your Eros. Comment 2 if you're still unsure and sitting with the questions.